Yes, please.
Okay, fine. Today we are on chapter 5. This is the stakeholder engagement. We are very close to the longest chapter, that is the program life cycle, which has got further subdivisions into the process groups. But anyways, stakeholder engagement is, as we understand it from PMBO.
Suhail sir, your voice is very far. I don't know. Today little far.
आज क्या खास बात है जी? ठीक आ रही है अभी कि नहीं आ रही?
That's much better. Thank you.
It's good now. Thank you.
Okay. Right. So today we'll start with the stakeholder engagement, program stakeholder engagement. And naturally, we do understand the importance of stakeholder from our knowledge in project management. It was really extremely important that we identify the stakeholders, understand them, analyze them, and then appropriately communicate with them, and then keep them engaged throughout the project. Now we are running a program, and our scope has increased. We have a wider scope to cover, and definitely we have a larger audience of stakeholders. And there are many stakeholders which are common to our various projects and program, and maybe with the organization also. So I will be mostly dealing with stakeholders from who directly impact my program or who impact my projects, and therefore my program. And then there might be some organization stakeholders. So I have to properly weigh them and keep them engaged throughout the life of the program. Okay, the processes which I will get involved in stakeholder engagement is the identification of the stakeholder. Naturally, as we understand, stakeholder identification, then stakeholder analysis. In project management, we used to have both of these things, stakeholder identification and analysis, done in a single process, and that was in initiation. We used to identify the stakeholders. But if you look at it from another angle, you will see that identification of stakeholder is very similar to risk management. You identify the risks, you identify the stakeholder, then you analyze the risk. Here also you need to assess and analyze the stakeholders, and exactly the same mechanism has to be employed here. First of all, you have to do the qualitative analysis and then the quantitative analysis. So this analysis will actually be including both of these things, and I hope I discussed with you the stakeholder thing. No, that was probably some other class. I will be talking about that. Where did I talk about? I think I discussed with you, wasn't it? Stakeholder analysis.
No, sir. No, we did not discuss the quantitative and qualitative analysis.
Okay. Right. So I have a separate slideshow prepared for that, just for dealing with the stakeholder analysis. I'll show you that as well, and that is a very interesting read, because you see, when we are studying these different approaches, we actually do not go deeper into the things, and we don't really know how the things actually happen on ground. And interestingly, all the management tools are mostly simple, they're commonsensical. Very few of them, like, if you're dealing with statistics and you're doing Monte Carlo analysis or things like those, they are a bit complicated to understand the calculation and all that. Otherwise, I don't think any of the tools used in management is of any, the difficulty level is more than a child can understand. So there are very few things that are difficult. So then we have the stakeholder engagement planning. We have to be very careful in planning, and we should be able to perceive how the stakeholder has to be, you know, treated throughout the life of the program. Now, once we say how the stakeholder has to be treated, I would rather like to call this planning as the what you call in risk the response plan, or you could call it your your stakeholder engagement strategy. I would rather like to call it a stakeholder engagement strategy, because for every stakeholder you may have a different perspective and a different strategy to deal with. Not exactly each and every stakeholder, but at least you will have to group these stakeholders into certain categories, and then those in those categories, those stakeholders will have to be dealt in somehow the similar manner in each group. So we will talk about those things. This would be covered under analysis, and I will separately talk about it. Now, once you are actually, this is all the planning thing is completed here. Your identification, your analysis, and your strategy to deal with the stakeholder, and then during execution or during implementation of the program, you will come across various stakeholders, and then you will behave with them exactly in the manner suggested by the strategy, or for that matter, your plan. You will deal with them exactly according to the plan or the strategy, whatever you have devised, and you will communicate those things which are supposed to be communicated to them. Naturally, every stakeholder has his own needs and expectations, and you have already identified them and analyzed them, and you have understood their needs and expectations. Only communicate to a stakeholder what they need to know. You don't need to be extra, you know, providing extra benefits under the hood. That is not really required. A stakeholder should only be communicated what he or she desires and what they need. If at all you feel that this stakeholder should have this information, but he or she does not realize it, that this communication is required and they are not demanding it, you can put them wise. But otherwise, if a stakeholder is not interested in certain communication, then they should not be communicated to them. Especially the tendency of preparing very few reports and sending every report to everybody, this is criminal. This is very bad strategy. Rather, it is no strategy at all. Okay, but we reach there at a very later stage. The first question is, do we really identify all the stakeholders? Just from the beginning, do you really understand and how to identify the stakeholders, and do we do that in our programs? For that matter, even in projects, we don't do that. We are not that serious about it. We take it as granted that whatever the stakeholders would be, we will come across them. That's it. We don't really understand them. We do not identify them. We do not know them. And then suddenly, right in the middle of the program, if you come across a strange looking person who is a stakeholder, and you are completely at a loss to understand what this stakeholder really needs and wants, and how are you going to deal with him? Maybe you have no strategy, so you may like to avoid him, which is not an appropriate manner to deal with a stakeholder. Anyway, we'll talk about all these things and more. And naturally, while we are discussing things, we can discuss many other things also. But let's start from what the book says about it. As we understand, the stakeholder is an individual, group, or an organization. Now that this is interesting, that may affect or be affected by. So we understand these two categories. There are certain stakeholders who may affect the project. All right, he's providing the funding, he's affecting certain decisions or something like that. So that may be a key stakeholder, and we need his support in the program. So they may affect the program. Then there are some who can be affected by the consequence of the program. Whatever are the benefits we are going to be creating, or the outputs or outcomes we are going to be creating, certain stakeholders would not be benefited from them, and they will they will be at a disadvantage, and they are worried about it. So because they are worried about it and they don't want to be damaged, they want to stop your initiative. They don't want your program or your initiative to succeed. So naturally, these stakeholders are equally important because they can somehow cause trouble for the program. Then there is yet another category which is very interesting, and that is they are neither in the first neither of the first two categories. They may not affect, they cannot be affected by the program, but they think they are. They think they will be affected, right? So this is their perception, which might be wrong. They think they may be affected by our decision, our activity, or an outcome of a project, program, or portfolio. Such like people are also our stakeholders. Why? Why am I considering them as stakeholder, whereas they have practically nothing to do with my project? What do you think? Why I'm taking him as a stakeholder? This person who has nothing to do with the project or the program. Anyone?
It could be.
Ravinder,
Sorry, Charles.
yes, Doctor. Yes, Ali. Carry on. Sorry.
No, it's okay. What I was going to say, it could be that there could be opposers to the program, which internally, but you need to be able to take care of those.
But if somebody is opposing a program, that is definitely definitely a stakeholder. That your competitors, your enemies, or, all of these are your stakeholders. But I'm saying this person has absolutely nothing to do. He's not a competitor. He's not somebody who can affect the design of the program. He is nobody who is affected. But he thinks he can affect this person who assumes that he will be affected this program. Why are you considering him as a stakeholder? That is the point.
Sir, I don't know if he does not impact our program, then he is not a.
Maybe he can give a wrong to the other stakeholders. If he is directly involved, if he is a negative group, they send a wrong signal to the other stakeholders, or they might be involved in some kind of messaging to others also.
You see,
Mr. Suhail, could it be that he could be a future stakeholder?
Might be, yes.
Stakeholder, right?
Might be.
Maybe. But actually, that the thing is that he is just a saboteur. This guy is just a saboteur, right? Neither he is going to be a stakeholder, nor he is a stakeholder in any way, not affected by, but because he thinks that he can be affected by the consequence of the project, program, and portfolio, probably he will do certain acts which will either retard the progress of the program. I mean, this person had nothing to do with our program, but still he can cause trouble for the program. You understand my point? Well, he can go to media, he can make a lot of whoop and cry, he can file a case in the court and get a stay order. And it's such an important project which we are undertaking, and this guy has absolutely nothing to do. If he takes a stay, then probably whole of this initiative is going to go for a standstill, just for nothing. Later on, it will be proven that this was not even a stakeholder, and but still, just because his perception is that he is affected. For example, we are constructing a dam in Pakistan, and naturally, the people who will be benefited from it ultimately definitely are the stakeholder. People from the agriculture, people from Balochistan, people from all over the country, they have some concern. Then naturally there are other stakeholders who will have to sacrifice their land. Their lands will be impacted. They will go underwater. So they have a very valid concern. They are the stakeholders. If you do not compensate them well, they are going to cause a lot of hue and cry. Then we have opponents, like, India doesn't want you to have your dam, so they will make a lot of hue and cry. So they are definitely the stakeholder. Who else? A person who has absolutely nothing to do with Pakistan is sitting somewhere in Iceland, and he says if this dam will be constructed, then probably the ice cap will melt. He assumes that. This is absolutely stupid remark. He has absolutely nothing to do. So ice cap will melt and probably the world will end. So what can you do about this guy? Should we consider him as a stakeholder, or should we not consider him as a stakeholder? PMI says anybody who even assumes and he thinks that he's a stakeholder, you start taking him seriously, because this guy is going to cause trouble in long run, right? So he will go into international court and he says the ice cap will be melted and this dam should be closed. So now then comes this other thing: how do you deal with the stakeholders? What is your strategy? So there we are going to interact with the stakeholders. We are going to convert the stakeholders. Those even those who are opposing it, we can sit down with them, we can talk to them, and we can convince them. Look at what they want and what their advantages are, and what is the middle way, how this conflict can be resolved, how we can negotiate a deal with them, and all that. And ultimately, we are going to convert those stakeholders into our favor. Even those who were the negative stakeholders, we will try to pacify them and ultimately convert them into those stakeholders who are in favor now. Similarly, we may have to visit this guy in Iceland, and maybe we need to talk to him and try to talk some sense into his head and ask him to please refrain from any such comments about whatever we are doing. So anyways, this was a very awkward example, but naturally it is. Anyone who perceives that he is a stakeholder, you guys have to take him seriously. This means this person, no matter how mad this guy is, but he means business. He will trouble you in one way or the other. So better be cautious of that, and you have to take whatever necessary measures have to be taken. So we understand.
Asaji, one question: why it is program stakeholder engagement as a topic in the SPM4? It should be management, right?
No.
Maybe I missed. You might have explained this.
Even PMI has changed it to engagement, but at certain places they are still using the word management. So generally speaking, as a whole, this discipline is called stakeholder management, but it has been established that stakeholders cannot be managed. Stakeholders cannot be managed because stakeholders, number one, stakeholders are not always your subordinates. You can't really manage them. Secondly, they are not things. They are human beings, right? So you don't manage people. Even in the discipline of human resource, they have stopped calling it human resource management. They say personnel management or whatever. So they are changing the names now because management is usually non-living.
Yes, sir. In the last standard, instead of human resource management, they simply called it resource management because resources can be humans, material, or anything else.
Exactly. So that
and engagement, stakeholder management was changed to stakeholder engagement.
Stakeholder engagement. So now we call it engagement because actually you don't manage the stakeholder, you manage the engagement of the stakeholder, right? So he is not your under command that you can manage him. You have to somehow convince him to behave in a certain manner. That is, you are changing his attitude, changing his behavior through negotiation or whatsoever. So you are basically changing the engagement, the rules of engagement with that stakeholder. Anyways, so I think we very well understand a stakeholder can be internal to the organization, it can be external to the organization. Stakeholder could be positive or negative, and they can impact or can be impacted by the program, right? So, and another thing I would say, stakeholder could be a very petty, small stakeholder, and he could be a very influential, huge stakeholder. We do not have to differentiate between any of them. Once we are identifying the stakeholders, we have absolutely no right to judge them. Don't judge them while you are identifying the stakeholder. Don't classify them as positive or negative or internal or external or big or small or whatever you want to. Don't do that. Just identify all the stakeholders. Classification will come later, because classification leads you to a kind of assessment or analysis. And once you have started analysis, then you are basically trying to do the qualitative analysis. You are trying to sort out who is a big stakeholder, who is a small stakeholder, who means more to you, who means less to you. So this way of thinking should not be applicable at the time of stakeholder identification, because we don't want to miss out anyone and everyone who has absolutely anything to do with the program must be listed down as a stakeholder, no matter how small or big, how internal or external, how positive or negative or whatsoever. I wish I could have a complete list of all the possible stakeholders on this program, and then I would try to engage them accordingly. But just like risks, we don't know all the stakeholders. There are many stakeholders who are not visible in the beginning of the program. They start becoming visible later. Or for that matter, there might be a number of stakeholders in the beginning who do not remain to be the stakeholders after some time. They are only stakeholders for a temporary period of time during the program, and later on they vanish. And there are people who were never stakeholders, and towards the end of the project they suddenly become stakeholders, and they become such an important stakeholder that they may come on the top of the list. Then we can have a stakeholder who is a minor stakeholder, but over the period of time of the life of the program, this stakeholder starts gaining strength and he becomes important and even more important, and ultimately he may be at the top of the list. Similarly, a stakeholder may lose influence. They may go down on the list. So whatever stakeholder, even if a stakeholder stays with you throughout the life of the program, this stakeholder will keep changing his space, and naturally your strategy will also need to change accordingly. So I think that is amply clear: internal, external, positive, negative, big, small, all this. Now, program and project managers need to be aware of the stakeholders' impact and level of influence to understand and address the changing environment of programs and projects. Actually, these stakeholders cause the change in the environment of the project. Their expectations, their demands, they actually change the way the project or program had been conceived. So if you want to address this changing environment, you have to control these stakeholders. Stakeholders should be identified, analyzed, categorized, and monitored. Unlike program resources, not all stakeholders can be managed directly because they are not your subordinate. but their expectations can be. So once you are managing their expectations, you are actually keeping them engaged. When you're managing expectations of the stakeholders, naturally, once I've identified the stakeholder, the immediate job is that I start understanding their needs and expectations, right? And once I understand the expectation, then I start managing their expectation, or for that matter, maybe fulfilling their expectations, or where their expectations cannot be fulfilled, then I will have to talk to them and negotiate with them. Why do they want things to be that way? Maybe I negotiate a deal with them and I can tell them that we can show you this much and not the whole picture. Stakeholders represent all those who will interact with the program as well as those who will be affected by the implementation of the program. We have already said that program and project managers have traditionally classified and managed stakeholders' expectations in a manner similar to the approach for identifying and responding to risks. That's exactly my point. That's exactly what I was saying. That dealing with the stakeholder is very closely related. The mechanism is very similar to the identification and analysis of the risk. Stakeholders like risk should be identified, studied, categorized, and tracked. Stakeholders like risk may be internal or external to the program and may have positive or negative impact. So that much is very similar. Program and project managers need to be aware of both stakeholders and risks in order to understand and address the changing environment of programs and projects. That is exactly what we said in the last slide. We want to understand the changing environment, and this changing environment is due to the change in behavior of the stakeholder and the expectations of the stakeholder. So if stakeholders started expecting something which is not understood as they should be, so their behaviors has to change. They have to be negotiated with, and they should be engaged at a different level. Unlike risk, stakeholders cannot be managed. That is the difference. We cannot manage a stakeholder. Only stakeholder expectations can be managed. In many cases, stakeholders have more influence than program manager. They might be very senior. They might be key stakeholders. They might be, making the decisions about the fate of the program. So you can't take them lightly. So they may have more influence than the program manager, the program team, and even the program sponsor. So we are talking about something big. Balancing stakeholder interests is important, considering their potential impact on program benefit realization. Now, how can we balance the stakeholder interests? They are so diverse that they are looking at us from every different angle. Right? I am right in the middle, and from all around 360 degrees, stakeholder is looking at me, and they all are having a different expectation. They all have different needs. How is it possible that a single program manager can fulfill all the desires, all the needs, and all the expectations of all the stakeholders? That is practically not possible. But knowing that, you still have to deal with them in a very intelligent manner, as if you have some kind of relationship established, and then you can continue on with it. Right. So stakeholders will change, and we have to go along with them. We have to be flexible. People have a tendency to resist direct management. This is again the point to show you, anyone who is not under your command, why why the hell should he be listening to you? He would not listen to you, no matter how sincere you are. So you do not try to manage them. Don't try to manage them. Just try to understand them. I would say it is just like a psychologist dealing with his subjects, right? There is a small little story. If there was a person who was living in a village and he decided to sell off his donkey. So from their village, this person and he took his small child along with him, and they were traveling to the town, nearest town, and they intended to sell off their donkey. So donkey was tied to a rope and the kid was pulling the rope, and they were walking, all of them were walking towards the town, and suddenly some travelers passed by, and they looked at them and made a remark which these people overheard, and the remark was, how stupid these two guys are. They have an animal which they can ride, but they are still walking. So the little child, the father said to the little child, okay, you ride the donkey and I'll walk. So child just had a seat on the donkey and they started moving. Then few other people passed by and they said, what a stupid kid. Old guy is traveling, is walking on foot, and this small kid is just enjoying his life and sitting on the donkey. His father is pulling. So the kid was really embarrassed, and he just got down of the donkey and asked his father to please sit on top of the donkey, as if people don't talk like that. Then a few more people passed by and they said, how bad of this guy, this boy, he is making his walk while he is just sitting on the donkey. So there was no other way. So what they did was both of them climbed on the donkey and they started traveling. Now nobody can say anything. But later still people were saying, how cruel, two people are sitting on the same donkey. So there is no way you can satisfy all the stakeholders. Having said that, you still can deal with them at a psychological level. You can understand them and you can try to resolve the problem by balancing the stakeholder interests. And that is important considering their potential impact on the program benefit realization. Because if this initiative doesn't go through, the certain benefit we ultimately expect to be delivered will not be delivered. So people have a tendency to resist direct management. Whenever if you say that this project program manager is trying to manage you, stakeholder will mind. He is not really tuned to be working under someone, so therefore he would not like to have this statement. For this reason, most program management literature focuses on the notion of stakeholder engagement rather than stakeholder management. So stakeholder engagement is a better word to use in these circumstances. Now, stakeholder engagement at the program level can be very challenging again because stakeholders view the program benefits as change. People have a propensity to resist change. Program is a big initiative. It's going to bring a huge change in the organization. And all those who oppose any change, these people will never let you ride. So stakeholder engagement at the program level can be challenging. People have a propensity to resist change when they have not direct requested it. If you didn't ask for it, you would not like to change your way of working according to this thing. Participated in creating it. Just because you were not involved, so you can't just start saying that everything which is being done is wrong. Everything is not really wrong. Actually, you may be wrong. Do not understand the necessity for it. That is also not right. That you know that we are discussing something with the stakeholder, and still we are not ready to accept it that this guy is a stakeholder. And we are concerned with the effect of change on them personally, how they will feel. So I think we should choose the lesser evil. So, and we should look at the engagement of all of the stakeholders. Stakeholder engagement is often expressed as direct and indirect communication between stakeholders, person and the group, and the program leader and the team. So whatever communication the stakeholder has to do, this direct or indirect communication has to be managed. So as I said, this stakeholder management or engagement is very closely related with communication, because your media is dealing with this. Stakeholder is an individual work. This definition we have talked a lot. Can influence or be influenced by its process or outcome. Level of interest and the level of influence. Now, these are two things. How interested you are and how much influential you are. They're completely two things. You may be very interested in the program, but you have absolutely no or very little level of influence. Right? So what do? We have to understand the level of interest and the level of influence of a stakeholder, and accordingly plot where he can be placed. Stakeholder may be unaware. The status of a stakeholder could be any. He may be completely ignorant of the fact that a specific change is being brought up for, and because there is nothing going to be visible. So a stakeholder can be completely unaware. He must not be knowing that he can get any benefit or can be affected by the consequence of this project program we are starting. It is the responsibility of the program manager to expand extensive time and energy with all known stakeholders to ensure that all points of views have been considered and addressed. Though this is a autocratic system, they will make certain decisions based on that analysis, but this data is important. Program managers focusing on stakeholder engagement, because that is the key, should familiarize themselves with the customer relationship management, as in the case of mobile companies and many other similar initiatives, where customer relationship is very important. For any business, probably that is true, and you will be getting orders like anything. So the story doesn't just finish once you have delivered something. The story has started already, right? And you can keep improving your plan. CRM, you might have heard. CRM, as we said, customer relationship management, is useful when identifying stakeholders and mapping their relationships to the program. It is important to note that stakeholders may include customers and non-customers. So when the stakeholders are invited from the greater organization, then we have to understand that the stakeholders may include your customers or even those who are non-customers. So you will, considering all of them, you will develop your statement. Program managers, what are the responsibilities? He engages the stakeholders by assessing their attitudes toward the program and change readiness. Now, although we are not discussing change here, but practically speaking, in real life, when one of the stakeholders has certain power and he wants to exercise that power at lower level, he can. And this communication, what we said, that there are certain needs of communication between amongst various stakeholders and between stakeholders and other groups, in which the biggest group is program management group. The strategy, the governance under which we will develop it. At program level, stakeholder engagement can be challenging because stakeholder view program benefits as change. Stakeholder does not understand the business value. They only look at your work as if that you are supposed to be doing, but at the same time, why you should be doing it. People have propensity to resist change whenever they are not directly requested. So this is a very common phenomenon. If you didn't ask for it, you are not interested, which is not a very good approach. If you didn't ask for it, then why don't you ask now? Participated in creating it. Because you were one of the participants, the stakeholder might be one of the participants once the stakeholder engagement was designed or created. But if anything goes wrong, we will lose synergy which we created with the projects and programs. People have a propensity to resist change, and the fourth point is they are conducted with the effect of the change. Whatever is the impact of the change, so your whole of your team has to reorient themselves accordingly. Thus, the program manager and the program team members used to understand the attitudes and the agendas of each stakeholder. Every stakeholder has different requirements, so you have to judge them, see them, how they are taking it. Throughout the duration of the program, you have to have an eye on all the stakeholders. And as you have seen, the stakeholder roles of quality, they are more towards execution. Some of the things are in planning, and most of the things are otherwise in later on. Program manager should be the champion for change. Whatever change is being brought in the organization due to the program, as well as he should also be advocating change to break the status quo. So he should be the champion of the change in the organization and understand the motivations for each stakeholder who might attempt to alter the course of the program or to intentionally derail it, to prevent the program team realizing one or more of its intended benefits or outcomes. Now, what we need to understand here is there are stakeholders in our projects, in our programs, who will create a complete chaos. And one big reason is that stakeholders do not know and understand their duties. And No, yesterday I was teaching another subject, and there was a doctor, and she was involved in some big program, and many tuberculosis, what do you call them, sanatoriums and clinics were being created, and this was a program under which all this was happening. She said that when they were given this program, everything was clear, and we started working on it. And as soon as we developed our initial plan, one fine morning, the resident engineer arrived, and he changed the whole plan, and he said that this all will be included. Without taking any approval, without moving any change request, because that guy is a senior guy, he thinks he has the authority to change everything, which is not correct. Program manager should be the champion, and he would be in control of all such stakeholders who get involved with us. The program manager needs to bridge the gap between the current as-is state of the organization and the desired version of 2B. I hope you understand as-is and 2B state. What do we mean by that? Can someone explain it?
It's actually the current state and the future desired state to be after realizing the benefits.
Exactly. So we go through these kind of problems all the time. We are sitting today at somewhere. We have a way of working. We have an organization. This is evolving organization and all that. But where do we get from here? Right? So we try to assume a platonic future state which we would like to have achieved in, say, next 10, 20 or 30 years. And all the stakeholders in that area, they must be educated to understand what our strategic objectives are and how this change can be brought to the organization, how it can be beneficial for the whole organization. And nobody else should have any power to completely rub off the whole thing which has been done already, and he likes to just put it to use. Not this way. So he is right in saying that this is the current state, and then we have the future state, and between current state and future state there is some passage of time which is the duration of this program, and generally what we studied is generally the criteria for that. G. Future state, you are right now at the current state, and to get to the future state, what and how you need to change. What will you work on? You understand what is the future state. You understand what is the current state. How are you going to advise how to get to the future state? Naturally, if we take any initiative to do that, some time will be spent, and at the end of the day, we will learn something out of it, and we will be able to reorient ourselves. Therefore, the program manager should be familiar with organizational change management. So this is another subject we need to understand. Successful program manager. Yes.
Sorry, just on the previous slide, understanding the current state and the future state, it's also to be able to measure the performance, correct?
Measure the performance.
So the metrics, yeah. Measure the performance of the benefits, or measure the benefits.
Exactly.
The value of the benefits. Yeah. Okay.
Of course, because you're talking about program. So naturally, we are not only going to be talking about the stakeholder, but basically we are talking about the benefits.
Yes. So here you would, as is state, you would have the current state with the metrics and then the desired state, so you can actually measure how much improvements you made.
And we talked about benefits. We said all the benefits may not be measurable, right?
Yes.
So
Correct.
we have to take certain measures to make unmeasurable as measurable. So to convert an
Yes.
unmeasurable thing into a measurable thing, we probably need to use some kind of a Likert scale and some kind of a general understanding that this is what it means. So we will be
Understood.
looking at that. Okay. Successful program managers utilize strong leadership skills to set clear stakeholder engagement goals. Now, you are not assigning any stakeholder to do something. No. We have targeted a certain stakeholder to convert him from his current state to a future state, and that is our goal to achieve. So we are taking certain measures to educate that stakeholder or to uh, make him aware about certain things, as if he can be converted, he can be shifted from his current perceptions to the desired perception. We will see how we convert the perceptions of a stakeholder. These goals involve engaging stakeholders to assess their readiness for change, planning for change, providing program resources and support for the change, and obtaining and evaluating the stakeholders' feedback on the program progress. So, as I was saying, this is not only the program manager's baby. Program manager has to run the whole show along with his stakeholders. He alone cannot do it. So we have to engage the stakeholders, plan the change, provide the program resources and support, and ultimately obtain and evaluate the stakeholders' feedback on the program's progress. Programs, because they are more uncertain and complex also. Programs are usually more complex because they have got more larger systems, more interactions, number of processes are abnormally high and things like that, and that adds to the problem. That makes the whole issue more complex. The complexity of those environments warrants the efforts of the program manager to understand and manage the wide stakeholder base. Figure 5.1 depicts a diverse stakeholder environment that may shape the actions needed to manage those expectations. So here what we have, stakeholder environment for programs. So this is the program manager and he is with his program team. He has certain number of project managers who are working with their project teams under RPMO and overall within the performing organization. Whereas we are also interacting with our boss, the program sponsor, who is part of and who is sitting with the program steering committee. That is a higher body. So you are communicating with the higher body. You are, you have delegated the work to a lower body, the project manager, and he would be, responsible for all the domains within the project. And at the same time, you are also dealing with your own project team and who all are the stakeholders in this environment who, by the way, all the stakeholders is within the big circle. But some of these things are under multiple layers, and there are some direct stakeholders who could be your organization's employees, suppliers, potential customers, resource managers, and this and that. So all of these stakeholders are your program stakeholders, and this is the stakeholder environment for the programs. Stakeholder engagement. Mapping stakeholders is a pivotal step to ensure successful expectation management and in turn deliver business benefits for the organization. Beyond the communication aspect, stakeholder engagement concerns negotiation of objectives, agreed on desired benefits, commitment to resources, and ongoing support throughout the program. Program is the custodian, as if everything happening in the organization, all the communication occurring, they all are actually in line with what was supposed to be done. Okay, can we have a little break of 10 minutes and then we can get back? So we meet.
Yes, of course.
Meet after 10 minutes. Take care.
Okay. Okay.
Right, I'm back. Okay, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I'm here. I'm
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir. We are here.
I'm here too.
Okay, so we were talking about mapping stakeholders is a pivotal step to ensure successful expectation management. Until and unless we understand the stakeholders, understand their needs and expectations, and we have plotted them, analyzed them, and we have mapped them to whatever their needs and expectations are, probably we can't deal with them. And if we can't do that, then we cannot deliver the business benefits to the organization as well. It is not only the managing various communication needs of the stakeholder, but it goes even beyond that. Some stakeholder needs to be pampered for something. Some stakeholder needs uh, specific have specific interests. So beyond this communication aspect, stakeholder engagement concerns negotiation of objectives, agreement on desired benefits, commitment to resources, ongoing support throughout the program, and so on and so forth. So you have to do a lot many things with these stakeholders. As far as the identification is concerned, um, as I said, just like risks, be proactive and try to identify as many stakeholders as possible. And please ignore how big or small a specific stakeholder is, because you are not analyzing them as yet. When you are identifying them, just keep counting. Don't reject any stakeholder that this is too small, it is too dark, it is too red and too green. No, this red, green, all we can discuss later. We can analyze later, but bring them all on the register. The stakeholder register. They all stakeholders who you must have established in criteria that these conditions should be met to be considered anyone as the program stakeholders. Anyone who befits that, no matter how small or big that stakeholder is, that stakeholder must be entered into the register. This register, created through detailed stakeholder analysis, lists the stakeholders and categories. By the way, the analysis comes a little later, but register does exist. The mere name of various stakeholders could be the very first entry into the register. Later on, when the analysis is carried out, the results of analysis are also included into updated into this register, and ultimately you are better armed to decide what to do with the stakeholder. There is another document which you can create as a result of analysis. Although we are not as yet discussing analysis, we are just talking about identification. But for your information's sake, in identification we create the stakeholder register, and in analysis, whatever we do, qualitative analysis or quantitative analysis, respectively, we can update the stakeholder register accordingly. Whatever information about qualitative and quantitative is received, that is then recorded into the register. But then there is yet another thing, that is, how is your behavior going to be with this stakeholder, how you will interact with that stakeholder, what is your strategy. Now, one way of doing it is put it in the register, but I would strongly go against it. You should not put it into the register, because register is a public document which could be accessed by anyone for any purpose. Because we are talking about devising a strategy about a stakeholder, that it is recommended that this should be recorded into a separate document, which should be the stakeholder strategy document. So your strategy about that stakeholder are, as we have the risk response, similarly what is the behavior we want to maintain with with each of the stakeholders. This is recorded separately. Just the only reason I am not putting it into the risk register is because risk register is a public document. Anyway, so this will have all these information, and program manager fields could influence the stakeholders' perception and the program's outcome. So howsoever the relationship with the program, their ability to influence the program outcome, their degree to support the program, other characteristics or attributes, through that program manager fields could influence the stakeholders' perception and program outcome. For large programs, stakeholder program manager may develop a stakeholder map to visually represent the interaction of all stakeholders, current and desired state. Just a moment. I'm sorry I took your time. I had a very important call from Canada, and actually we got the status of um, authorized training partner of PMI. We have got a member company in Canada. We got ATP status with them, and now we will be conducting trainings here in Pakistan and other places also. Anyways,
Congratulations.
okay.
Congratulations, Suhail. Masaji, we will get this now. What do you say? PDUs. We can apply for PDUs with
Yeah, of course.
SysComp.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
PDUs is no problem at all. PDU,
Okay.
we don't need to be a ATP or REP for that. Anybody can give you a PDU. PDU is not a problem. So if you are a PMP already and you need PDUs, you will get, I think, how many hours are there? Almost 30-35 hours of PDUs you will get. Right?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Most of them. Right. Let's move ahead. Okay, we were talking about for large programs, program manager may develop a stakeholder map in which he can visually represent the interaction of all the stakeholders who can talk with whom and who is where, kind of what is the current state of that stakeholder and what is the desired state. So where do you want to take this stakeholder from and to where? It is best to begin by identifying all of the major stakeholder groups, then incrementally breaking them down into great detail to highlight differences in their needs, expectations, and influence. So this has to be done in analysis, and you have to be very careful in mapping these. This is a kind of a stakeholder map, and I'll talk a lot about this, and I'll build on this. Actually, this is just the beginning. This is a very simple stakeholder map, which is two-dimensional in nature. This is two-dimensional. It is normally this map could be between interest and power, could be influence and power, interest and influence, or any two variables. Now, you have to decide what two variables are most important to you to map the various stakeholders. For example, we are taking interest and power. I would rather like to divide that into a Likert scale from 0 to 10. Both of them. On x-axis, say, just forget about the background quadrants, forget about them. Just imagine that the total length of interest is starting from 0 to 10, and total length of power starting from low 0 to 10. Now, allocate a value to each stakeholder, a value for interest and a value for power. Naturally, you don't have to be very accurate about it, but you can talk to the stakeholder, you can conduct a survey, and somehow you can determine how influential or powerful this particular stakeholder is on a scale from 0 to 10. Maybe this stakeholder is holding 6 in power. Okay, how much is he interested on a scale from 0 to 10? Maybe 4. So you will plot like A. A was almost 6 on power and 4 on interest. So A is plotted here, B is plotted here, C is plotted here, and so on and so forth. Plot all of the stakeholders on this one map. Then, after you have done that, draw a box of 10 by 10, divide it into 4 equal quadrants, 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 4 equal quadrants. You will have the top right quadrant to be high in power and high in interest. Top left quadrant high in power and low in interest. bottom right quadrant, that is high in interest and low in power, and bottom left is low in both, low in power and low in interest. Now, simply by putting, looking at it, you can very easily see which is the most important box, which is the most important quadrant. That is top right, high in power and high in interest. So here, who are lying there? P, H, and F. These three stakeholders are there. So, what is your strategy to deal with them? Maybe you, as we have written there, manage closely. This is my strategy. These three stakeholders I will manage closely. Right? Meaning what? That I cannot ignore any demand they make. Let's talk about the A stakeholder, stakeholder A. We just have to keep him satisfied. We do not want to overburden this stakeholder with information. Just give him what he needs. For example, he is a banker who has provided a loan to our program, and we have to repay it in equal installments over a period of time. Naturally, this is a big stakeholder. That is a key stakeholder because he has provided funding to us when we needed it. And definitely we have commitments. But just because he provided me funding and he has a high power, but we also must understand he has low interest. He is not interested in your progress reports. He is not interested in the daily things happening in your program. So please don't bother him, because if you do, the banker is going to be angry with you, right? If I'm calling him 2 in the morning and telling him project could not continue because one of our person has met an accident, so obvious answer would be, so what can I do about it? I am just a simple banker. I am not a hospital. I am not a doctor. Why are you calling me? Why are you informing me all this? In the exuberance of dealing with a key stakeholder, the program manager thought that this stakeholder would be interested in everything. He is not. So keep him satisfied. What does a banker want? He just wants a quarterly report on loan repayment, and that's about it. He is not bothered what you are doing in your project. Who got sick? What happened? He is not bothered. If at all he would like to know something about the project, it would be a very cursory statement, how well the project is going, only to ensure whether you will be able to pay his loan back or not. Nothing more. So he would actually ask for a specific report, which would be a very high level report. Then we have got C and E. Who are these people? They do not enjoy any power at all, but they are keenly interested in the project. Who are these people? Normally, these are the people who actually are end users. End user does not physically come to you, tell his requirements, but end user is not even communicated most of the things. They are not, asked for their opinion. So such stakeholder, which is difficult to reach and who are in a very large quantity, such stakeholders have just to be keep informed. We can't completely ignore them, although because of their interest in the project, they need to know what is happening. Therefore, I am supposed to send them a newsletter or whatever mechanism, by whatever means, I would keep them informed. This is my duty towards these stakeholders. And anyone who doesn't have much power and doesn't have much interest, like G and D, such people do not require anything from me. I have to have minimal effort spent on them, because I just have to watch them. I just have to monitor them, how they are behaving, what they are doing, where they are going, as if when they leave out this quadrant and suddenly G, which is obviously high in power than D, if the power of G keeps increasing, it is not much far away that it will be in the upper quadrant. And every dot and every stakeholder on this matrix, on this stakeholder map, is dynamic. They are not going to stay where they are right now. This is their current state. Where these stakeholders will be, I don't know, right? But I can dream. I can have an expectation that for example, a stakeholder will be eliminated by third quarter. G will grow out to be high in power. He will enter the top left quadrant. So I can somehow predict these kind of things. And actually, if you keep plotting the current status of stakeholders, you would see how they are moving. Maybe, let me draw. Okay, for example, A was here, and after a month, A has come here. Just a minute. Just a moment. This is, where were we? Okay. For example, we see that in next month A has come here. In next month A has come here. This is one month, 2 months. After 3 months we're there. After 4 more months they're here, and then he was nowhere. So the journey A has taken is like this, and he was eliminated. And maybe B is going this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, whatever. So you see, every dot, every stakeholder is dynamic and is moving around in this in these 4 quadrants. And naturally, at every point in time, when I am taking certain actions for those stakeholders, I must be aware where this stakeholder is, as if I can take the appropriate action, and where the stakeholder is expected to be in future, as if I can devise my future strategy for that particular stakeholder. I hope you are understanding what I'm saying. I'm opening the mics for you. If you have any difficulty understanding this concept, please.
Quick, no, concept is clear. Quick question: does it mean that throughout the life cycle of the program, we need to continuously assess and see where their power and influence, is changing?
Exactly, that is important. If you really want to, if you want stakeholders to be under your control, if you want to manage their expectations properly, you must clearly and all the time know where a stakeholder is in this graph. And this is just one way of looking at it. I'll show you other ways of looking at it as well.
But this is, again, very similar to the risk management, as you mentioned.
Exactly.
We have to continuously monitor these assessments.
Yes. You see,
like risks.
What we have done in this diagram, we have actually qualitatively analyzed them and we have grouped them together into different sections. So we did exactly the qualitative analysis. This is the qualitative analysis. Okay, let me show you the other presentation that will actually be more interesting for you. I hope you can see this. I'm not. Let me share
No,
it.
we only see a slide with stakeholder identification.
A stakeholder analysis is not.
No.
And now,
Let's see, it's loading. Yes.
okay. So just look at it. This is so interesting. We have many ways of dealing with stakeholders, and all have to be discussed here. So I'll not why to analyze, and there are two-dimensional models and there are salience models. First, the two-dimensional models. Let me move on to the respective slide. Okay. So we can have power versus interest grade. We can have influence versus impact grade. We could have power versus influence, and importance versus influence. And then, and you see in the four of these grades, we are having only two variables: power interest, influence impact, power influence, importance influence. So whatever variables are most important to you, take two variables, create a grid. These are two-dimensional models. And how would it look like? This is how it looks like, right? So what I've done here is a slightly different thing is I've given a different color to each quadrant. I have physically written 0 to 10 here and 0 to 10 there, as if I can allocate them appropriate values. So I have given them appropriate values. And then highest priority is managed closely. So H, C, and L are shown as red, highest priority. And the purple color is important, and the green one is just to inform, and the gray one is just for to keep an eye. So this is how it will be plotted in 4 quadrants, and the similar kind of grid could be created for power interest, or it could be influence impact, or any one of those. Important influence, whatever. Now, talking about a salience model. Now, in salience model, what we do is we do not have only 2 variables. We have 3 variables. If there are 3 variables, we have only 2 dimensions to draw a graph or something. How do you represent 3 dimensions? Any ideas? I have power, legitimacy, and urgency. How do I show it?
3-dimensional.
3-dimensional. One
Like a cube.
And do you know of any other method which could represent a 3-dimensional model in 2 dimensions?
Like a cube.
Like a
Cube.
cube is 3-dimensional. I'm saying trying to represent 3 dimensions in 2 dimensions. Rather than having a z-axis at the third axis, if you can flatten out the third axis, then how would it show? I'll show you.
You have the negative axis. I'm guessing.
The size of the dot, the size of the stakeholder could be.
I remember that there's something called bubble graph or bubble.
This is called bubble. So this is the salience model. We can show it as
Right.
I think here it would be. This is a 3-dimensional model. You can see that this is 3 dimensions, and I'll be plotting all these things on this, right? First of all, Venn diagram is also one way of representing it. Power, legitimacy, and urgency. So three circles are intersecting. Where 3 circles are intersecting, the core point, the center point where all the 3 circles are intersecting, this is where legitimacy is high, urgency is high, and also power is high, right? Are you with me on that?
Yes, sir.
So these kind of stakeholders, I will have a a specific behavior with them. These are the stakeholders who are definitive stakeholders. I cannot ignore them. They are definitive stakeholders who have high legitimacy, high urgency, and high power. Now, what about high legitimacy and high power? No urgency. All those stakeholders who are high in power and high in legitimacy, that they have got official power. So they are the dominant people. They are the dominant stakeholders. You have to deal with them accordingly. Okay, legitimacy and urgency. Legitimacy high and urgency high, power is not high. So what is it? It is a dependent stakeholder. It doesn't have a power, right? He feels urgency. He needs things urgently, and he sees legitimacy in that. So he is dependent. Somebody has to help him out achieve his goals. And what about a stakeholder which is high in power and high in urgency, but without any legitimacy? You have a pistol and you want to kill a person, and you are low at in legitimacy. You will kill him. You will just kill him. So you are dangerous, right? Okay. Now let us look at a person who just has legitimacy and nothing else. A person who just has legitimacy and nothing else. This guy is discretionary. A person who has power and nothing else. This is dormant. And urgency and nothing else. This is demanding. And anybody who has nothing, low in everything, this is not a stakeholder at all. Got it? The 8 classifications. Now let us show the same 8 classifications into another way. Okay. Looking at it in 3 dimensions. If you are here, this is what? This is high in urgency, high in legitimacy, and high in power. So this is definitive. As I said on the Venn diagram. So we did it in Venn diagram. We are doing it in 3 dimensions, and we will also be showing it in the bubble diagram. Right? So right now what we are seeing is the one cube out of the 8 cubes, the one cube which is high on all ends, legitimacy, urgency, and power. This is the place. Your stakeholder is somewhere in this cube. So this is a definitive cube. This is this category of stakeholders are definitive in nature. Let us see the expectant stakeholders who are high on one side, right? For example, this green one is high on power and high on urgency, but low on legitimacy. So this is a dangerous one. I would have showed this in a red color because it's dangerous. Then you can look at this one, yellow one. This is high power, high legitimacy, right? I could have shown these into separate diagrams, but I have put it all together into one diagram. I could have shown these cubes separately displayed also. And then we have got high legitimacy and high urgency. So if you are on the higher side, on two, you will never be, because you will never be touching this cube, the topmost cube. So you will be in the lower cube than the top one. Lower, lower, I should say, high on two. It will be maybe power and legitimacy on the higher side. So if there are three two-dimensional models shown here. Okay, if you just have this thing, high power, high legitimacy, you are here. This is dangerous. This is dependent. Now we have covered the outermost cube and three cubes on the higher side. Now let's see. These are the cubes we have covered so far. We are left with 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? And 4 we have covered. There were total of 8 cubes. Now let us go to those 4 cubes. This cube, the yellow one, light yellow color. This is high on power, low on legitimacy, and low on urgency. High on power, low on legitimacy, and low on urgency. So this is dormant. Then green one is demanding. This blue one is discretionary, right? So these are the 3 cubes, and if we want to see them separately, this, and this. And we are left with only one that is low on all sides, and that is that back one. The low on all sides is low power, low legitimacy, and low urgency. And I said this is not a stakeholder. Anyone who doesn't have a power, who doesn't have a legitimacy, who doesn't have urgency is not a stakeholder at all. So out of the 8 cubes, 1 is not the stakeholder, 7 have different kinds of powers. So as compared to the two-dimensional model, this is a much stronger way of representing it. We can also represent the whole of this thing into a bubble chart or a salience model, and that would look like something like this. That would look something like this. A big bubble in the top right quadrant, a big bubble on top right quadrant is definitive. A small bubble on the top right quadrant is dominant. A big bubble in the bottom right is dependent, and small bubble in the bottom right is discretionary. A big bubble in the bottom left is demanding, and a small bubble on the bottom left is not a stakeholder. A big bubble on the top left quadrant is dangerous, and a small bubble on a top left quadrant is dormant. Again, we have shown all the relationships here. I hope you understand now. This can be represented in this chart. You see, now this is the analysis of these stakeholders. We have this one, the high on all, is a definitive stakeholder. This is the most important stakeholder, and this is my core stakeholder. This is my core stakeholder. And what should be the engagement strategy? Focused attention, close management, keep satisfied, keep informed. So this strategy applies to this definitive stakeholder, as well as this is true for dominating stakeholder, because this is dominating stakeholder who is low on urgency but still high on power and legitimacy, which is dominating, is also very important to me. So the strategy I have selected is true for definitive and dominating. Then I have another stakeholder which is dangerous, high on urgency and high on power. So this guy is a nuisance. He is potentially harmful. Manage with caution. Keep this guy satisfied. Just keep him satisfied. Don't let him out of the box. This is the dangerous stakeholder. Then we have got dependent stakeholder, which is high on legitimacy and high on urgency. So he is dependent. He is prone to realignment. This guy needs guidance. Keep them informed. Then we have latent stakeholders, which are high on only one thing. The expectant were high on two things. The core were high on all the three things. So latent, the guy who is high on urgency is demanding. His orientation is he needs immediate action, unnecessary importance seeker. And how do we behave with him? Monitor with care. Then we have got another latent role, and that is high in legitimacy. So this is discretionary. These are good stakeholders. They interfere only in case of problem. Otherwise, they don't bother you. So deal with them at macro level. Regular status reporting is required. Otherwise, you don't need to bother about these people. Then we have got dormant stakeholder, which is high on power, but nothing else. So this is a dormant stakeholder. Can't do nothing. He has no needs. He does not bother you. Just he has a lot of power, but he has no other requirement. So he is not bothering you at all. But you must keep an eye on this stakeholder. And if your non-stakeholders are which are low on all, and no, you don't need to take any action. So you see, this is a beautiful way of devising your strategy for these kind of stakeholders. You can even defend this strategy in front of your boss. This is a very, very logical way of doing it. So I personally think variance model is best.
Mr. Suhail, just a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree that the stakeholders, as part of the stakeholder strategy, you want to move the dangerous and potentially the demanding out of their boxes into a better area?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. You see, if you want peace, move them to discretionary or dormant status. And if you want to handle them immediately, move them to definitive or dominating status. If you want them to never bother with you again, then move them to the low status, to the non-stakeholder status. Then they won't be able to bother you at all. But this is not your discretion to move them from here to there. Basically, you have to monitor their movement and adopt the strategy accordingly. The maximum you can do is monitor their current status and make an expected desired status. Right? You can change their attitudes, but you can't change their quadrant. Right? You can monitor the quadrant.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. You can monitor the quadrant and you can change the strategy. But what else I can do with this stakeholder, I'll show you. Okay, before I can go there, this is another research, and in this research it says similar to what we have just talked about. It talks about stakeholder cube. Here, power, interest, and attitude. Now he has got power, interest, and attitude, right? On this graph, now what are these things? You see, if somebody is high on all, high power, high attitude, and high interest, this is a saboteur. Anyone who is low on everything, he is an acquaintance. Anyone who is low on high on power and high on attitude, this guy is a time bomb. Then we have got savior, high on power and high on interest. A person who is high on interest only, this is a friend. A person who is high on attitude only, this is a tripwire. The person who's higher on interest and higher on attitude, this is the irritant. So you can, use any three variables and then accordingly measure or devise a mechanism for understanding what kind of attitude is expected from these kind of stakeholders. So though it is not a very easy job, but this is a very interesting work. You can actually orchestrate these stakeholders this way. Let me move on to other strategy. I'll close this slide down and let me find out if they've shown status. Okay, I'll just show you how to change the status. You see, we can devise 5 levels of a stakeholder awareness. Stakeholder awareness. One is a group is a stakeholder, but he is unaware that he is a stakeholder. This is the lowest level of a stakeholder who is a stakeholder, but he doesn't know he is a stakeholder. Somebody will knock at his door and tell him you are a stakeholder. Oh, I am a stakeholder. Fine. So this is an unaware stakeholder. Then we have got a stakeholder who is kind of your negative stakeholder, who opposes you. Rather, I will say opposes you. Okay, unaware, opponent, and then in the third stage we get opponent or neutral. Third is neutral. Fourth is favor, in your favor, and fifth is leading initiatives. So the continuum is unaware, opponent, neutral, and then we have got in favor, and finally we have got change leader. Now you determine that your stakeholders come when they are recognized, then identified. Where were they on this continuum? Were they unaware? Were they an opponent? Were they neutral? Were they in favor? Or were they the leaders, the change leaders? So for example, this was an unaware guy. This is his current status. Where do you want to bring him? Do you want him to be unaware the remaining of his life? Or do you want him to be promoted to your opponent? He didn't, until unless he didn't know he was not doing any harm. But as soon as he becomes your opponent, that is you probably would not expect a stakeholder who was unaware. You would rather to make him aware, make him neutral at least, but not your opponent. So maybe I am expecting the unaware stakeholder to become neutral at least, right? Anyone who is a neutral or who is an opponent, I want to see that guy in at least favoring us. So you devise a strategy for each stakeholder. What is the current status of this stakeholder and what is the desired status of this stakeholder? And on the one hand, you are monitoring these stakeholders on a map, stakeholder map, and on the other hand, you are monitoring their status, how it is changing from their current state to the future state. I hope I could make some sense out of it, because I don't have that chart in front of me. Otherwise, I would have shown you. Maybe Maybe it comes later, but right now I don't have that. Do you get it?
Yes, sir.
Fine. So probably with all this discussion, we have very thoroughly talked about the analysis part as well. Although we were just discussing the identification as yet, but because that diagram came in, so I thought maybe we can talk about those things. Okay, so where were we? Examples of some key program stakeholders. Let me show you this slide. Right, you can see here some key program stakeholders are maybe the program sponsor will definitely be a key stakeholder, and that would be an individual executive or a group or executive who champions the program initiative. So on that scale, from unaware to the leader, he is the leader. He is one of the leaders. Anyone who champions your cause, who promotes your cause actively, is in that category. So program sponsor is already in that category. Program governance board is also could be in the same category. Program manager is in that category. Program project managers are in that category. Program team members are also in that category. So all of the key stakeholders, they all are in that category. But then there are other stakeholders which could be, some are unaware, some are opponents, some are, so you would decide where you want to bring them. Performing organization that is performing the work of the program through component projects and non-project work. Program management office cannot also be a stakeholder. Customer is stakeholder. Potential customers are stakeholders. Suppliers are stakeholders. Government regulatory agencies are stakeholders. Right? Maybe government regulatory agencies are unaware that they are your stakeholder, but they are your stakeholders. Whatever they decide, whatever they propagate, we will have to adhere by them, whether they know it or they don't know it. So they may be unaware of us, but they are negatively impacting us anyways. Competitors, again, whether they want it or they don't want it, but they are a big drag on us. Competitors are always negative to us. Now, what do you think? How to deal with the competitors? As a forward-looking leader, how do you think you can engage the competitors? Yes, please. That is a difficult question. Let's see what you say. How do you engage the stakeholder?
I don't know. Think my personal opinion: stay away from the competitor and do not engage with them and do not let them know what you're doing.
Okay.
Be confidential.
Okay. So that you are saying the fight is on. We are not friends. You are conveying the message: we are not friends, and we will fight to the last bullet. Right. What else? Anyone?
I think that in some circumstances, you might want to develop a very expensive technology that you can't fund yourself, so you may want to work with a competitor on that particular program.
That's exactly
to develop them.
That's exactly my point. Sometimes things are not in your favor. They are not in your control financially or otherwise. Maybe your competitor is too good in something and you also have something good, and maybe you build a consortium with your competitor to come up with a product no one else can produce, and this union of past enemies could be the greatest niche creator. You both can create such a niche that nobody can ever done that. So probably this is the positive side of conflict. Use the conflict positively towards the betterment of both the parties. Maybe after this creating this niche, you guys are so well intertwined with each other, this product becomes so popular that you never think ever of disengaging again. So always think of synergy, even with your competitors, and always think of synergy. You see, I usually think, why do we have so many shops of jewelers? And that too, all the jewelers are sitting together in a one market. Why are they sitting together in one market? Don't they have competition? Why do we have the similar shops in the same market? And everyone is making money, everyone is selling, and everything is going fine. What's happening inside? Why can't people only from there? What do you think? What's happening there? Yes, please, Shalom.
Make it easy for customer to go one place and then he can bargain or check all the shops.
Right. Basically, once you go to the market, all the guys sitting there, they have a union and they have decided how they are going to behave with the customers. Right? They have decided, we will not sell, none of us will sell lower than this price, whatsoever the case may be. And nobody will sell more than this. You can go to a taxi stand and you ask how much fare from one of the guys, and there is some kind of signal which goes under the hood. Everybody knows what he quoted, and every taxi cab driver will be quoting you more than that, and then you ultimately have to turn back to the first one. That is only in Pakistan, not in the places where you are living, because here we negotiate on everything. Probably in India also, they negotiate on everything. Anyways, my point was that the competitor is not always to fight with. If you have to fight, fight well. But if you can avoid fighting, why can't you make friends with the competitor? Why can't you create synergies and reap benefits both ways? I am not asking you to fleecing him, not take advantage of him, but both of you, both of the parties work together for betterment. Anyways, so this is just a suggestion.
Mr.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Taylor, it could be that from a one of the benefits, in order to achieve the benefits which you as a program and organization know about it, you may want to future buy this company, merge it with because they may have some technology or skills that you don't have.
Exactly.
And that would be another reason, yeah. Okay.
Yes. But there are hostile takeovers, there are joint ventures, there are consortiums. Today one person was bidding against you, and tomorrow he's bidding along with you, and things like that. This is business. In business, don't have any conflicts, permanent conflicts going on. So
happens a lot in the space industry.
Yeah. A competitor may rely on the benefits of the performing organization's program as a component one of their program, and in those cases would be interested in success in comparison to the performing organization. You see, you somehow get into a relationship where competitors are happy with your success. That would be a great achievement. You have converted a competitor into a friend. Then there are many organizations who can be affected by this project or program you are undertaking, and you can make them aware of how they are going to be benefited, and when are they going to be benefited from this. They will automatically become your come in your favor, and there could be any number of other groups. So stakeholders should be very properly analyzed and recognized, and they should be dealt with a lot of care. Ultimately, the program management team relies on their experience and expert judgment to identify and fully expand the list of stakeholders. Brainstorming sessions among the initial program team members and the key stakeholders is useful in identifying potential stakeholders, their roles, and their significance to the program. Where possible, aid in the identification and characterization of these stakeholders. I think this is self-explanatory. Key information should be obtained from the key stakeholders in order to better understand the organizational culture, politics, concerns related to the program, as well as the overall impact of the program. How this program is impacting the organization itself, and what are the basic organizational culture, politics, and concerns. This information may be obtained through historical information, individual interviews, focus groups, or questionnaires and surveys. Questionnaires and surveys allow the project team to solicit feedback from a greater number of stakeholders than is possible with interviews or focus groups. Actually, everybody does not really understand how to make use of questionnaires and surveys. Although every researcher tries to use these tools, questionnaires and surveys, but they don't know how to make questionnaire. They don't know, most of them, they don't know how to make a questionnaire, how to analyze the results. Because properly and religiously analyze these results, you would be spot on to identify your flaws and build your plan accordingly. Regardless of the technique used, key information should be gathered through open-ended questions to solicit stakeholder question. If you're asking yes, no question, these are not open-ended questions. Whatever options have you provided, he will answer only, he is bound to answer within these options. Say you have provided 5 options for an answer, though any one of that would be ticked. But if he has a different opinion than those 5, he can't write the 6th. Therefore, in good questionnaires, you would see that it says 1 to 5, and if you have a different opinion, you can write in the next column, and you can descriptively say, you can say other, and in other you then write out what exactly you mean. So this could be a valuable feedback, because basically questionnaires and surveys, they are qualitative data gathering methods. To convert them into quantitative, to convert this into these things are quantitative data gathering techniques, because we collect numbers from there. We don't collect ideas. But when you allow the user to write down in a small space any variation of the answer, you are adding quality to the data. Although it becomes a bit more difficult to handle these kind of forms in which there are text written and there are more where you can write long sentences or whatever. So who is going to copy that and summarize that and so on and so forth? But if at all you can do that, that is the best approach. Regardless of the technique used, key information should be gathered through open-ended questions, as I said, and solicit stakeholder feedback. From the information gathered, a prioritized list of stakeholders should be developed to help focus the engagement effort on the people and organizations most important to the success of the program. The program manager should establish a balance between activities related to mitigating the effect of stakeholders who view the program negatively and encouraging the active support of stakeholders who see the program as a positive contribution. So you have to decide what kind of environment you are passing through, which stakeholders are negative and which are positive at this time, and how to make use of the positive contributions. The overall stakeholder list and the prioritization of stakeholder engagement activities should be regularly reviewed and updated as the work of the program progresses. Then is the stakeholder analysis. Oh, this is the same thing which I just talked with you. I thought it is not here. So we have already talked about it. I don't need to. Actually, in a previous class, there was a question on this stakeholder analysis, and then I had to add these slides. I just don't remember that I added it into this presentation, but if it is there, it is good enough. And stakeholder cube, and that's it. And this is again another way of portraying the power, attitude, and trust. Okay. Next is stakeholder engagement planning. Stakeholder engagement planning is, while in planning, you are in a way you are devising the strategy how the stakeholder is going to work. So planning activity outlines how all program stakeholders will be engaged throughout the duration of the program. Stakeholder register is analyzed with considerations of the strategic organizational strategic plan, program charter, and program business case to understand the environment in which the program will operate. As a part of stakeholder analysis and engagement planning, the following aspects for each stakeholder will be considered: organizational culture and acceptance of change, attitude about the program and its sponsors. You see, the people around us, the people who are stakeholders, all the terms written here in these 4-5 points, most of the stakeholders will be unaware about them. The importance of organizational culture, the acceptance of change, attitude about the program and its sponsors, expectations of program benefit delivery, degree of support or opposition to the program benefits, ability to influence the outcome of the program. So these are core activities. These are the following aspects are the most important aspects to engage your stakeholders. This effort results in stakeholder engagement plan, which contains detailed strategy for effective stakeholder engagement for the duration of the program. The plan includes stakeholder engagement guidelines and provides insight about how the stakeholders of various components of a program are engaged. The plan defines the metrics used to measure the performance of stakeholder engagement activities. This should not only include measures of participation in meetings and other communication channels, but should also strive to measure the effectiveness of the engagement in meeting with intended goals. Then we have the guidelines for project level stakeholder engagement should be provided to the component members, component projects, and non-project work under the program. Stakeholder engagement plan provides critical information used in the development of the program's communication plan. Program stakeholder engagement. Stakeholder engagement is a continuous program activity. As you see, the continuous improvement is a continuous activity. Similarly, the list of stakeholders and their attitude and opinions change as the program progresses and delivers benefits. So your conceptualization is occurring. All programs are created and closed with at least one stakeholder. At least one stakeholder has to be there for the program. Due to the primary role for the program manager throughout the duration of the program is to overall stakeholders are adequately and appropriately engaged. In many cases, the documentation may need to be formatted and presented differently for certain stakeholder groups. It is important that decision-making stakeholders are provided with adequate information to make the decision. So either you are the one who is authorizing something, or you are the one who can be benefited out of it. So this is how we are going to engage the stakeholder. When necessary, the program manager may utilize strong communication, negotiation, conflict representation skills. Large programs with diverse stakeholder groups may also require facilitated negotiation sessions between stakeholders or stakeholder groups when their expectations conflict. Especially in program management, if you are finalizing the roof design, and on the other hand, one of the persons who is trustworthy, if he is saying something against me, then probably it will be counted. But if this person shows it in a mellow manner, then probably he may be extending his help to us, and that would be even better. The history of stakeholder participation provides important background information that could influence stakeholder perceptions or expectations. For example, if a stakeholder group has been actively participating, it may be that they are confident with the program decision direction. So you are confident with the group's direction, or it is possible that way. As the program team works with these key stakeholders, they will accept and log stakeholders' issue and concerns and will manage them to close. Okay. Any questions so far? Yes, please. Okay. As the program team works with the stakeholder, they will accept and log stakeholder issues and concerns. And where is the issue rising? When you cannot, satisfy the stakeholder, you cannot understand his needs, and you cannot settle their issues, or for that matter, whatever the problem is, you can't eradicate that. Then it will become an issue, and issue log is a document which prioritizes and tracks issues, will help the entire program team understanding the feedback before receiving from the stakeholders. Why are we talking only about our list of stakeholders, which is a small, simple spreadsheet, maybe an adequate tracking tool? Is it possible we can track through it? Yes, of course you can track through it, or you can track by your personal scores, which you can have the app extended app created, and on that application, this feature should be there. For programs with complex risk issues affecting the large number of stakeholders, a new sophisticated tracking and prioritization mechanism will be will tracking and prioritization mechanism may be rejoined. Impact analysis should be used to understand the urgency and probability of stakeholders' issues and determine which issues may return into program risk. Okay, this brings us to the end of the stakeholder chapter. I think we should not move ahead. We can do the change management in the next lecture. Let me see. Okay, we can complete it. We can complete it. It is not yet done. It is not yet. I thought the chapter is finished. No, it is not. Okay, within the stakeholder, we are now going to talk about how the stakeholder communication will occur. Okay, effective communication create a bridge between diverse stakeholders who may have different cultural and organizational backgrounds, different levels of expertise, and different perspectives and results, all of which may impact or influence the delivery of the benefits by the program. Communication is at the heart of program stakeholder engagement. Effective communications create a bridge between diverse stakeholders, as we have already said.
So slide not showing.
Not showing? Okay.
Not.
Let me do it.
Okay, okay, good.
Okay. So effective communication create a bridge between diverse stakeholders who may have different cultural and organizational backgrounds, different levels of expertise, and different perspectives and interests, all of which may impact or influence the delivery of benefit by the program. Communication is at the heart of program stakeholder engagement. It is key to executing program endeavors and ultimately delivering benefits to the organization. The critical component is a vehicle for information sharing, negotiation, and collaboration among the program team members to drive program implementation efforts. So the responsibility of implementing the program lies with the program team. The projects are being dealt by another team, which is the project team. Program manager should actively engage stakeholders throughout the life cycle of the program, with particular attention to those key stakeholders who are high in power and influence. A strategy can be crafted for each stakeholder as identified, and as the stakeholder are identified in the stakeholder register. Stakeholder strategy. This accounts for communication requirements such as what information should be communicated, including language, format, context, level of details, etc. It can also address a feedback loop to discuss program changes and an escalation process. The resulting communication approach targets stakeholder support for the program strategy and delivery of the program benefits. Then some stakeholders are mutually curious about the program, and program components are naturally curious. The question and their answers should be captured and published in a way that that allows multiple stakeholders to benefit from the exchange. In many cases, the documentation may be current to be formatting and represents. You see, in Iran, what they do is they have got the similar kind of mechanism in which they raise questions with the stakeholders and then they help them out. Documentation may need to be formatted and presented differently for certain different audiences. Decision making stakeholders are provided with adequate information. Again, information is required and right decisions must be taken. The program manager should continually monitor changes and update stakeholder engagement activities. So this brings us to the end of this chapter. Ji, now you can ask questions.
So I have a question. So stakeholders are always humans, right?
Yeah, of course. Humans are
Okay.
groups, are organizations.
Yes, but they're ultimately humans.
Yep.
Okay. Because we capture the issues in the issue log, but there is another issue log as well in project management, for example, under the outputs, where we capture the development issue logs and stuff for the components. That's a different issue log, right?
Yes, of course, but you see, all the issues are in a common issue log. We do not have separate issue log for resources and separate issue log for something else. Human resources is not the reason.
Okay.
Anyone else? I think we should call it a day then. Tomorrow we'll start from the next chapter, and we are going
next week, yeah.
Next week is Eid. So let
So what is
okay,
our plan, sir? Because next week is Eid. Are we going tomorrow, or is there a change in schedule?
let me check my schedule.
Okay, because normally tomorrow we don't have class.
No,
But if you're changing the schedule for Eid, let us know.
You see, for Eid, I have not scheduled a class on 1 and 2. First and 2nd of August, we don't have a class anyways. So our next class will be on 8th and 9th.
Okay.
And then the last class will be on 15 and 16. 4 more classes.
Okay. Can you give us some material for, like, we have a long week coming, I mean, 2 weeks off. So any material, any content to cover, homework?
Okay, I'll send you something. But actually, I had been very busy, especially these 2 days are very busy. I start teaching at 10 in the morning till 12 at night. So I don't get a lot of time to prepare things for you. I already promised something to be sent to you, but I did not. I'll try my level best that before the next class you get something.
Okay, sir.
But also, Amit and Shahul, there is some additional folders in the download. There are some questions. I think I will go through the questions as well, the question papers.
Actually, there is a lot of material there, and I will try to put more material there. Right? You can take advantage of whatever things are available, and you can share. If you have your own question, you have bought some questions, if you think you can share them with others, why not? Share them there. Nothing more?
No, nothing
No,
more.
thanks,
Just
Steve. That's
we have a long coming up. I wish you happy Eid in advance, and give us some homework for the Eid, because even I don't have any office work. I have 1 week off for Eid, so give me something to so I can study during Eid.
I'll send you something, and I'll
Sure.
share instructions as well. So thank
Okay.
you very much, and
I wish everybody Eid Mubarak.
Same here. Wish everyone Eid Mubarak in advance.
in advance, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Inshallah.
Eid Mubarak to everyone.
Eid Mubarak.
Assalamu
Eid
alaikum.
Mubarak.
Eid Mubarak. Khar Mubarak.
Mubarak.
Assalamu alaikum.